Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 271st installment and Torah portion of the week. We are holding a Parshas Ki Tetze. Ki Tetze, another packed parsha, talks about the wayward son, talks about concerned property for another, a male wearing female clothing, and vice versa, sending away the mother birds, tzitzis, forbidden restricted marriages, adultery, vows, divorce and remarriage, a whole bunch of things. We're going to hit something at the end of the parsha, and we're going to speak about chapter 25, verse 19. Right? So the end of Parshas Ki Tetze, chapter 25, verse 19. Torah tells me about Amalek, talking about remembering Amalek. Right? It says, "It shall be that when Hashem your God gives you rest from your enemies all around in the lands that Hashem your God gives you as an inheritance to possess it, shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. You shall not forget." So the Torah tells me by Amalek, interesting enough, you remember what Amalek did, right? And you won't forget, right? You wipe out their memory and you won't forget. Well, if I wipe out the memory, then I should forget, right? The question is how you do that. How is the mitzvah done? Right? So says Moiver Rebbe, a Rav going to Moshe Moshe, this should be well. Brings down his commentary, Tam V'das, right? His commentary in Chumash, and he says this needs further clarification. Right? What's the further clarification over here? Why are we obligated to wipe out the memory of Amalek? Why is Amalek worse than any other nation? Right? In all the nations that brought their idols, their sticks, their stones they worshiped, did other things. Right? Why are they worse? Right? Why do we have to blot them out, wipe them out, so to speak? So, says Moiv Rebbe, over here, what's the source of the impurity? What's the source of impurity over here by Amalek? Because they look at miracles. They don't believe in supernatural. Right? They poo-poo the supernatural. Just like what happened in Egypt. Right? They're going to say it was the power of sorcery. That did everything. Take God right out of the picture. The Rebbe says that's worse. That's worse in general than idolatry. Because what does it say by Amalek? It says, Asher korcha b'derech. You know, what does korcha b'derech mean? Right, what does it mean over here? It says it happened upon you on the way. Happened, chance happening. No miracles. Chance happening. And they weren't afraid to do bad to Israel. Now, Israel, you have to imagine. Israel, Jewish people, were enslaved. No one ever escaped from Egypt. But everybody heard what happened in Egypt. Egypt got decimated. Totally decimated. And not only that, the Jewish people take out all the wealth. They absolutely take out all the wealth. Nonetheless, they weren't afraid. Because they don't believe in supernatural. Even though they heard about the miracles, they didn't say that it was God who did it. What did they say? Kishu, sorcery, that's how they did it. So everything according to Amalek goes according to nature. Everything is nature. Stuff happens. That's worse than idolatry. It's much worse than idolatry. So it's hard to imagine, and we'll go further into this in a second, but the sheer magnitude of what the Jewish people did, or let's say better, what God did to Egypt, and how he knocked them around, killed their animals, From the water and the blood. Lice, hail, killing the firstborn, darkness. When the Jewish people leave, they take all the wealth. The world power at that time, decimated. Decimated. See, but that's the power. That's the power of lack of belief here. They heard about it. This and that. It can't be. Can't be. It must be what? Must be sorcery. But I would say like this, even it would be sorcery. And they have that kind of power. And it has nothing to do with God. Why would you mess with them? Maybe they could use sorcery against you. But see, the whole point was saying, God did everything here. God did all the miracles. Says it all the time. Book of Exodus. God's going to show his power. God's going to show his might. Knock out the sorcerers. Knock out sorcery. Doesn't matter. Because even when their own sorcerers couldn't do certain miracles, that was it. They didn't hear about that. They didn't want to believe it. So what do they bring to the world? This idea of atheism. This idea that things happen because of nature. Chance happens. Stuff happens. Maybe they made up those t-shirts. Stuff happens. The hammer every brings down the name of the Grizz. Rav Israel says salvation of blessed memory, the Brisker Rav. And the Brisker Rav explains from a Gemara Baba Kama. Gemara Baba Kama. $89B. What does the Gemara over there say? That someone who steals a ganav is worse than a gazel. Now, what's the difference between a ganav and a gazel? A ganav steals when no one sees it. A gazlan, will beat someone up and take what they have. So it says the Gemara over there, someone who steals in secret is worse than someone who steals open. Why? Why over here? Because he honors the servant more than the master. Meaning, he's afraid of people, so he does it in hiding, but he doesn't pay attention to the fact there's an eye above. God sees it. Right? So stealing in secrets, he's not afraid of man over here. Right? Sorry. He's afraid of man, but he's not afraid of God. You don't pay attention to God over here. It's like nobody sees him, so he gets away with it. But really, a goslin, someone who steals by force, that should be worse. Why? Because he's not even afraid of man. He's going to take by might, by the force of his hands. He's going to beat the other one up. Isn't that worse? Because you tell me he steals in secrets. He's a ganav. He's not afraid of God. But he says, he's doing it in hiding. But someone who's going to do it and be brazen and steal from someone in front of their face, isn't that worse? You're not even afraid of man. What does it mean? So here it says that someone who's gospel steals by force. He does what he wants. Right? Whatever he feels like doing, because he's got power. Someone who steals in secret, he's got all kinds of thoughts how he's going to do it, how he's not going to get caught, how they're not going to see him. They're not going to see what he does. They won't see his actions. And he's thinking, making calculations of the world. So that's Amalek. Why is that Amalek? Because Amalek comes upon the Jewish people. What are they thinking? He said it's a wonder over here, even though the Jewish people are in the biggest role of their lives, right? God decimates Egypt. They're thinking of ways how to get them. They don't care. Maybe it's sorcery, maybe it's other things. They're going to figure out a way. They're going to work hard to figure out a way, an underhanded way to get them. But they don't think for 1 second it's done by miracles. It's only the unbelievable impurity that they have till it grows so much that that's so much worse than the other nations that worship idols. In other words, what are they thinking? They're thinking like a kind. They're thinking all kinds of different ways. How am I going to figure this out? How am I going to steal without anybody knowing? How am I going to do all this and not get caught? So they're also trying to figure out how are we going to get the Jewish people? How are we going to nail them? So to speak. Right? So they're adding and adding and adding to their impurity, which is worse. That is worse. Because here they're making this calculation of the world, like they own the world. The world is ownerless. They can do what they want because nobody stopped them, or so they think. So he goes further, though. He says, what do we find today? Then we find today that there are people that have ideology. They have ideologies. And ideologies are worse and more dangerous than even someone who's what we call a mumur l'te'avon. In other words, they sin not because they believe it's the right thing to do, it's the wrong thing to do. Why do they sin over here? Because of desire. It's because of the desire causes them to sin. So they do something not because it's an ideology. Why do they do whatever they do when they sin? Desire. That's the reason. So that's not as bad. Someone who's got a crooked ideology, even if it's covered up, even if it's covered up in holiness, much worse. Much worse, someone's got desire. Much, much worse. So you can even see people today. That there are plenty of people out there who are doing things. Why? Based on desire. 100% just what desire tells them to do. So that's what they're doing. It's not an ideology. An ideology means you're thinking about it, you're crafting it, you're working on it. So an ideology is 10 times worse. 10 times worse. Because now you're devising plans and schemes in order to fit what your ideology is. That's worse than people worshiping idols and doing things out of desire. And doing things out of desire, I understand. Right? They're just carried away. But it's not an ideology. When a person does something based on an ideology, the ideology, whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense, they build it up and they think about it, they nurture it, go back and forth on it, so to speak. Why? Because they have a certain ideology. And they want this ideology to be spread. And they want to give it over to others. People do things just based on desire, okay? It's bad. We're never going to say it's bad. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the end of the world, because you can overcome desires. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. But a person can overcome desire. When someone builds up an agenda, and they have an agenda, that means they work at it. They think about it, they turn it over upside down, and they don't want to get that agenda out. So there are many out there that have a bad agenda. Bad agenda. Now, it could be that, you can have certain quote unquote types of rabbis. They also have an agenda, crooked agenda. We want to show how left we can be. We want to say, yeah, I know Leviticus 18, chapter 18 speaks against homosexuality. By us, it's okay. And they build up a whole leftist agenda, trying to show why, not the end of the world, not so bad, or anything else they want to do. And open up Pandora's boxes where it should never be opened. To rely on things you should never rely on. See, it'd be one thing, they keep it to themselves. They hide it so you don't really know what their ideology is. So that is also scary. Because if someone's brazen, they're going to tell you straight out, this is what I believe. Okay. Someone who sneaks around and this and that, you don't know what they really think. But today people are pretty brazen. They don't care. They'll tell you what they think. So you know what to look out against. You know that it's a danger. Right? But here it's worse. It's not just being brazen. It's building a whole ideology. We see today, I want to keep this clean so they don't ban me from YouTube. And that is that you look at the power today of the LGBTQ, whatever community. A person comes out against them, you're going to get hammered, slaughtered. It's a good thing I don't have a reputation. Maybe I'd be in trouble over here. Because you're going to be more open-minded. They have a very, very powerful agenda. Unbelievably powerful agenda. It's all over the world. All over the world. And they've infiltrated to the point where they have little kids thinking about their own genders. Goodness sake, 6 years old, 7 years old. Gee, Johnny, how do you know you want to be a boy? Maybe you want to be a girl. Sally, how do you know you want to be a girl? Maybe you were really put in a boy's body. It's insanity. Right? They're not stupid. They want to start at the youngest people. And they want to get the message across. So it's not just you start with the adult that trickles down. Can also be. But see, you start with people who don't know. We're too young to understand. And what do? Corrupt them. Because that means future generations are going to be messed up because of it. So they have a very powerful agenda. So you can say, well, isn't it true? People do these type of things and they have a desire. It's a weird desire. Homosexuality. Very weird desire. Right? So you can say, oh, you're homophobic. I believe in the Torah. Torah says a man's going to cling to his wife. Right? In Genesis. Not to another man. Then the Torah says clear this prohibition. Leviticus chapter 18. It's a desire. It's an unnatural desire. If everyone would act on it, you wouldn't have kids today. You wouldn't have a population if you took it that far. But see, the whole world, the media, they have an agenda, what they want to give over, what they want to try and convince the public of. So maybe you're saying an agenda is worse. People do things by desire. Okay, it's been going on from the beginning of time. People have desires. They can have weird desires. That's not the same thing as having a whole ideology. When you have a whole ideology, something totally different. And you're basing it on that, and you're working hard, turning it upside down and trying to get it out there and all that. That's why it's worse. Because it's not just a desire. If it'd be just a desire, one thing. The fact that it's more than a desire, it's an agenda, it's a whole different thing. That's a whole different thing, because that you're thinking about, you're working on, you're turning it upside down to get that agenda out. That's why it's worse. So here, my Rebbe says, you know, what they did in Egypt was pretty bad. One of the most immoral places in the world. Right? And they also deserve to be wiped out of the land. But they don't say, forget about the Egyptians. Right? Blot out the memory of the Egyptians. They were disgusting people. Why? Because they were immoral. Totally immoral. Not saying that over here. Amalek is bad, and they deserve to be wiped out. Why? Not just because of the message. Message is bad. Brings doubt to the world, atheism. We live in, very much an atheist world in many ways. That's bad, 100%. Is that enough to wipe them out? That they should be blotted out and not remembered? So maybe here says, what's the reason? Agenda. They have an agenda. It's not just based on design. And when someone has an agenda, what are they doing? They're working hard to build up that agenda. Whatever that agenda is. Could be good also. Right? In this case, we're saying it's bad. Because this built up agenda, look what it brings to the world. Stuff happens by accident. That's what it brings to the world. Atheism, that's what it brings to the world. So if you have a good agenda, good. You have this type of agenda, you blot it out, you don't remember it. I want to remind everyone, I give a class every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, duties of the heart. Every Sunday, packed day, book of Leviticus chapter 16, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. No Hide Nations, 2:30 Eastern time on Sunday, 9:30 Israel time on the Noahide laws. Every Tuesday, Thursday, Q&As, 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time, Tanakh talk, controversial issues. Every Thursday, that is 8 o'clock Eastern time. Saturday, Pirkei Avos, after Shabbos here, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. I have conversion classes. Anyone interested in any of this, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, or beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBIChaimCoffman@gmail.com.